Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and this is Power Pop. Tonight on the interview, I want to welcome John Ivan and Jim Cunningham from the legendary Power Pop band Off-Broadway, USA. So without any further ado, let's get this interview started. Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse, and welcome to another interview on the channel. Tonight, we've got the band, well, two members of the band, Off-Broadway, USA. And in fact, that's what I want to ask you about real quick. Before we complete this whole introduction, what's the deal with the USA part? Are you Off-Broadway? Why is it USA tagged on the end? Is there another Off-Broadway somewhere?
So when the so we were on Atlantic Records, and right before, we started talking, we were talking about the Knack, and there were a lot of power pop bands. But when you're on Atlantic Records, that's a huge deal. That's like Led Zeppelin's on Atlantic Records, Aretha Franklin's on Aretha.
Oh,
So,
yeah, it's a big, huge.
right. So you can't just say, well, we're off Broadway like you're like a small local band. So they wanted to make sure they could keep the copyright. I mean, the trademark.
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So by adding that little USA, we could have the trademark off Broadway. Otherwise, New York would come after us. Every writer in New York would come after us. So by having that, we could trademark it, and Atlantic Records could put out off Broadway.
All right.
All business. I wish there was a
business.
Yeah.
This is the official introduction. So I want to welcome John Ivan and Jim Cunningham from the band Off-Broadway, USA.
A DJ would never say Off-Broadway, USA. So we got our big break on the radio here in Chicago. And I've been telling this story a lot, and I want to tell you the same story.
I want to hear it.
So in 1978, the number 9 song in Chicago was Come Sail Away by Styx. The number 9 song in 1979 on the same radio station was Off-Broadway, USA, Stay in Time. So a year after they had this huge hit, here we are on the radio, just like Styx. I mean, just as big, like any radio station you turned on, there's Off-Broadway playing Stay in Time. And we had no idea. We were traveling the country at the time. So we come back to the Chicago area, and everybody's like, you guys are on the radio all the time. So that one hit just turned the band into Off-Broadway. No DJ ever said Off-Broadway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we jump right in, I want to tell you how I learned about you guys. And there's a podcast called The Hustle with John Laverow. I don't know if you've heard of it, but they had Tom Werman on there for an interview. And John Laverow is talking to him about different bands that he produced and some of the bands that he absolutely loved working with. He mentioned the producers. He mentioned Off-Broadway. And of course, we were talking Cheap Trick because he produced that too. So he produced your first album, and he thought that was one of the records that he really enjoyed and recommended for someone to get into, is to check out Off-Broadway album.
That's a huge compliment.
It is a huge compliment because I love Tom Werman's work. I think his work, well, think about it. Stuff he did with Ted Nugent, I'm not so crazy about that metal stuff in the 80s he did, but I can appreciate him as a producer, okay? I think the stuff that he did with, we're already on a tangent. The stuff he did with Cheap Trick, I think is brilliant, okay? Think about it. In Color, Dream Police, holy crap, those Heaven Tonight, brilliant records. Your first album that he produced, absolutely brilliant. The first producer's album he produced, great, fabulous, power pop. Holy crap! I think it's just
you're
great
bringing
stuff.
up a subject that, so the Tom Werman took a big interest in the band,
and I was going to get to that, so I want to know how that came about, because on this show,
and that's exactly, a lot of people want to know. Like, it seems like it comes out of nowhere, but at the time, Off-Broadway we had a huge following in the Chicago area, right? I mean, wherever we would play, it would be packed, right? Yeah. But we didn't have that record out. No.
But this is the record that we're talking about that Tom Werman produced.
Right. So our manager at the time knew he had something. He was the same manager as Cheap Trick, Ken Adamany. So all he had to do was call record companies and say, you want my next big band, right? It was pretty easy for him. So next thing, Jimmy Iovine and Shelly Yakis come and see the band. Now, these are the guys who produced
Damn the Torpedoes.
I mean,
Tom
oh
Petty.
my gosh, Johnny Winter albums. I mean, it
Oh
was like,
yeah, they great
you know what I
stuff.
mean? Like these guys are sitting, Bruce Springsteen and all that. They're sitting there in a small club watching us play, right? And so back then we were like, wow, these guys are pretty, you know, we liked them. We talked to them quite a bit after the show and all that. They saw us in a small club. Next thing, Richard Perry from the Pointer Sisters and all, he comes and sees, he's like, oh my God, I got to have you guys, right?
Yeah. Ringo, the Ringo album. Yeah.
Right. So when Tom Werman comes, you know, the big decision is, do we like Tom Werman? I mean, it was that easy. Like, yeah, he's a good guy, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Well, we're talking, he probably he came and saw you in 79, right?
78, yeah, in a small
78?
club,
And
standing
he'd
on the
already
side.
done work with Cheap Trick already. So
Yeah. He was standing on the side of the stage there. I can remember, you know, he was standing there watching us, and we were like, you know, we always put on the same show. It wasn't like, oh, let's play for the producers. Oh, we're going to be so good tonight. We were always playing good. We were always, you know, I mean, it was just another night for us. And then they called us and said, yeah, he's going to produce your album. So it's all, you know, if you it's great. It sounds like you study a lot of this.
oh, I'm addicted to all of it. Believe
It's
me,
a
it
lot
just
of it's a
pours
lot
out of
of
me.
coincidences, and you meet the right person at the right time, and next thing things click for you. That's every story seems to be like that for me. I mean, I read.
And the thing is, in that interview that he was saying, he said he didn't understand how he really, okay, because he worked for Columbia, CBS, or whatever. He did a lot for Epic, right?
Right,
And
right.
this is on Atlantic. He didn't work for Atlantic. And he was going, I'm trying to think. He was trying to remember. I don't really know why I produce a band outside of Epic, but I did. But he spoke really, I go back and look at that for that podcast. He
Right,
really
well,
spoke highly of you guys.
I just want to go off, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but for the second
Love
Off-Broadway
tangents.
album, well, the second Off-Broadway album was produced by an unknown producer at that time named Kyle Lenning. So all of a sudden we meet this, I don't want to say country guy, but Kyle Lenning went on to produce Randy Travis, and he became a big time producer too. So we had this luck of meeting these big time producers who were helping us sound really great. So they take a lot of credit. Also, Kyle was smart enough to let us play. And so the second album, the first cut on there is called Automatic. That was a demo. He just said, that sounds good enough. Just put it on the
That
record.
was the demo?
That was a demo. We just
I would
recorded it
never have
live, and he
guessed.
goes, that's done. It was just, he's a very smart man. He didn't go, let's re-record it, you know. So a lot of stories like that helped us out, that people you know, helped
Well, I was
out.
gonna say, I was listening to that because, you know, Jim and I were like, I said, Grant, you know, you got to make sure you listen to that album with headphones on. And he's right. That record sounds really live.
Yeah.
Was the second album recorded like in a live, not that you were playing out live, but was the whole band like in one room just playing it?
Yes.
Because it
Yes.
does sound very live to me.
Right. And they kept all the live solos and things like that.
Holy shit,
So,
you guys are hot shit. No
so I
offense.
want to say one more thing about Tom Werman though. And I got it, and to this day, and Jim knows I'll say this, I want Jim to do some of the talking, is that people ask me about my guitar playing, and I wrote 3 songs on the first album. I wrote 5 songs on the second album, and so I like writing songs. But Tom Werman let me play all those crazy guitar solos I play on there. A lot of producers would have said play like Bon Jovi or something, you know, play like
Or
someone
play
else.
more reserved, or
Well, they would have changed the style, and he just let me play whatever I want. And I was, you know, I don't know if you're into guitar, but I have
we
a
can
lot of-
talk guitar if you want.
well, I have a lot of influences. Django Reinhardt, of course, and Bill
Mhm.
Nelson from Bebop
Mhm.
Deluxe. And you can hear that in my playing.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
he let that go, as opposed to being a producer going, oh no, this is power pop. We have to stick to the formula, right? And so I'm very lucky. To this day, people hear my guitar playing and go, what the heck were you thinking? So
Well, I was going to say that the guitar on these records, the interplay between both of you guys is just absolutely stunning. I was going to mention the guitar, so I don't know who's who playing what.
right.
But-
We did Rob and I, the 2 guitar players, and Rob will
Mhm.
be with us at our next show. um, he always said there was this magic, this interweaving
Oh yeah.
magic. And I would say, yeah, and we would room together, of course, you know, traveling.
Mhm.
You know, we had to. And then we would talk guitars, and we never like got in, you know, I can only compare it to Keith Richards and Ron Wood, that kind of like chemistry where you
Mhm.
don't know what the other guy's playing, but you just stay out of his way. And Rob and I had that same thing. If he was playing
Yeah.
something, you never heard me play a note. And if I were playing something, he never would. It's just there's certain
It's
guitar
great.
yeah, they do it. I know,
Well,
and I could go on about other guitar players, but
uh,
he's one of the best. So
I love it. So what were you, oh, gosh, what were you playing? A Hamer back then? What were you playing? What,
yes,
what was that what you were
yes, the
playing?
Hammer guitar. Yes,
How
I
did
had
you
about
guys, because well,
25.
of course, you know, Rick Nielsen had all those Hamers back then. How did you, is it because of being in Illinois? What's the, why were you, I don't know. What's the deal with the
Oh,
Hamer?
Grant, it's even worse. It's even more coincidental.
I'd love to
I
have one
bought
of
a
those
Hammer
Hamer.
guitar, and I like the sound of it.
Uh-huh.
And well, the at a show, uh, it broke. And Paul Hamer was in the audience, and he comes running up and he says, I got one in my trunk. Do you want to play it? And I go, sure. So he runs out to his trunk. My guitar broke in half. I had no guitar to play. I had one Hamer guitar.
Well, that's a
And he happened to be
problem.
in the audience. So he gave me another one. And then next thing we had a deal where he was giving me guitars. I had about 25 on stage at one time. And a roadie to tune them all too, right? Of course. And so yeah, we hit it off. Paul and we did a show. Paul Hamer and I did a show together, some kind of charity event. He called me and he said, you know, hey, can you put the band on stage? So we got together with Pez Band. Do you know what Pez Band is?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Paul's a good guy. He's a great guy.
Yeah. But
But
that,
ain't luck.
I don't know. The photos I've seen of you back in the days, like a red Hamer special or something. Yeah, I don't know. I like it.
You got,
I was just
Grant, you got me
wondering.
laughing. You got people. So a guy came to our last show and he said, I own your yellow Hammer. He says this to me. I go, I
Mhm.
never owned a yellow Hammer. He goes, here's a picture of you playing it. Right.
Yeah.
That's how many guitars I had. Paul was great. He was always giving me guitars. And
So what are you playing now for your main guitar? Just curious. What are you playing?
now,
Yeah.
my dad helped me put together a Telecaster. It's kind of a, Frankenstein Telecaster. So it
Cool.
sounds great.
Whatever
In
happened to
fact,
those Hamers?
oh, I don't know.
Guys in the audience.
I don't know. I just love all this stuff.
You know who Liberace is?
Yeah.
Liberace used to give away things. I gave away a lot of guitars. I
Yeah.
mean, if
Well,
somebody,
that's okay.
Yeah.
Just curious. Just wondered.
Yeah.
How did you end up coming into the band though? Because I know you weren't originally in it. The band formed in like 1977 or something. And
oh gosh, you're really asking deep questions here.
why? I was just curious how you. Well, I'd like to also know. I know you mentioned some influences, but we're going to talk to Jim too. But I just have a couple of things.
Okay, good.
Well,
Good, because
how old were you when you started playing guitar? I mean, did you play in high school bands? I mean, was the Beatles like your gateway drug where you saw the Ed Sullivan Show and it changed your life? I'm just curious how you became, what's your whole history with guitar and how you became,
yeah, it's a good question because I did play through all high school and college. And then they came and saw me. Okay, I'm going to tell you, this is an honest to God story. John Pazin was the bass player. Cliff Johnson was the singer. They came and saw me, and they were dressed like complete slobs. They were being new wave guys, like real sloppy dressers. And I was all dressed up like a rock guy or something. And so they came and saw me and said, you got to join our band. I said, there's absolutely no way that's ever going to happen. And so that just can't happen. So then John Pazin called me up on the phone. I was still staying at I was visiting my parents. I wasn't living there. I moved out early. And he called me up and he said, whatever your musical interests are, and I'll never forget that he said this. He said, you can always play because I was in the Django Reinhardt, I told you all that. He said, you can play all of those influences in the back of the big tour bus as we tour the country. And I go, that you're so right. I can be a rock guy or a jazz guy, whatever I wanted to be, but I could still be in Off-Broadway. I could do two things at once, chew gum, and, So that changed my life right there. That comment right there, because I want, most rock people or guitar players, as you know, they stick to their guns and then they go nowhere. Or maybe they hit it big, but a lot of them just do nothing, right? So I was very fortunate that I got the right advice from the right guy. And then I started writing songs with Cliff. And then John and I got together. We would write, songs. Everybody in the band was contributing at the same time. So that's why when we got back together 4 years ago, the original lineup got back together. Okay. And then let's not go into this, but then certain aging or whatever you want to call it, health issues started happening. And that's when we were lucky enough to get Jim in the band, because Jim came in with the same attitude and the same idea of how to get the music across to the audience. And there were a lot of singers, oh, I love Off-Broadway, I'll sing, but they didn't get the picture, the how we did things, why we did things the way we did. So then Jim comes in and he goes, I love this kind of music. I love this kind of style. So we were, lucky that we didn't get, and as you know, I'm going to stop talking in a minute.
No, you're
a lot of bands.
He's
well,
good.
How about Sammy Hagar versus, David Lee Roth? I mean, some people couldn't take it. Jim, the last show we did, people came up at the end of the show and said, you guys are the best band I've ever seen. And it's like, we don't say anything. We don't say, oh, Jim's not the original guy, right?
I know. I would just not. I just leave it. Well,
Yeah,
you are who you are now. You're living in the present. This is what. Hey, this is off Broadway USA right now. So, Jim? Did you know John? Did you guys know each other prior to when you joined the band, or how did you?
No, we didn't.
How did you?
As a matter of fact, the first time I met
around?
John was about an hour before the show.
Oh, really?
Literally no practice. So yeah, so the way that I came into it, basically, Cliff fell ill and they had a couple of shows and they were about to cancel. And Bill Kowalski said, hey, I got a guy who I think who could do this. And so he called me up, and before I hung up the phone, I was absolutely in. But the only problem was I had 2 weeks to prepare and no practice with the band. It would be just show up and do the songs. And they said, just learn the first two albums just as they are. And
is that Rockford?
That the second one was Rockford. We opened for Cheap Trick on July 4th of 21. And a couple weeks prior to that, we played Dirty Nellies.
Oh, okay.
So I had a couple of shows without practice. And in my opinion, it wasn't great for me. But the interesting thing and the great thing about it, truthfully, was I probably already mentioned this to you in our conversation, was I'm used to being a front man and lead singer. I've only done cover bands. And we covered Off-Broadway back in high school. I mean, I've feel like I've known these guys forever, but I've done cover music. So for me, it's always been about the show and leading the bands that I have. So when I did these two shows and then I look at the two guitar players playing with me, I recognize that I don't have to be a show anymore. I just sing the songs as best I can and be out there and do my own thing, but not have to feel that I had to engage and really activate the audience. There's really a lot of energy in every single one of the players in Off-Broadway, and that excites me too. So it's fun to look around and see these guys having fun, and I just have to sing the songs. And but John and I met the night of the show, and as well as the other guys.
A lot of what Jim just said is why when the band got together, I wasn't the original member. They had like different guys going in and out, but they had no chance of getting any kind of record deal based on the lead singer alone. Cliff knew that. He knew that. He had been through, bands and all that. If you look at the history of Cliff Johnson, he had been right there in LA and all that. So he knew he needed a good band. And he loved the Beatles too. He was a big Beatles
Oh,
fan.
I can, yeah, I can,
Right.
I can hear that definitely.
Right. So he knew he needed George Harrison. He needed Ringo Starr. He needed everybody in the band. He couldn't just be like, hey, I'm John Lennon or whatever. So that's when he started, getting to get Rob Harding. And then they came and saw me and said, we got to have this guitar player. And so he wanted to put together like a super group of great musicians around him and say, well, actually, John Pazin was the guy saying all that. He's like, we need to put together a great band. And so I'm going to finish off the story then. So they're sitting around, they can't figure out what to call the band because they don't want to be superstars. They don't want to be on Broadway. And somebody said, well, what about calling the band Off-Broadway? Kind of the undercurrent of like the big time.
Right.
And that just clicked right there. And 5 guys getting together trying to be a super group without being a super group.
Yeah. Well, it's a super group to me. I'm just so surprised that the thing is, I knew all these bands and stuff, but for some reason, Off-Broadway eluded me until I heard this Tom Werman interview and they played a couple of snippets on there. And I went, holy mackerel, these guys are, it was like like when you're a kid, you heard the Beatles. Well, that's what happened to me when I was a kid. Like in 1975, I heard the Beatles. I hadn't heard any pop music prior to that. My folks listened to Lawrence Welk and stuff like that. But when I heard the Beatles, I think I first heard I Want to Hold Your Hand or Maybe She Loves You on like a 45. My neighbors had it on a 45. And I was just flipping through 45s because I was like, when I was a kid, I was just crazy about playing records all the time. And they had the picture sleeves of those first Beatle 45s. And I looked at it, I went, wow, those guys look cool. I had no idea who they were. But it was like when I heard Off-Broadway on that podcast, it was like, my God, why have I not heard this band? So I was totally taken with it. And then I, started buying this stuff. And that's how all this interview even came, because I was just all worked up. I thought you guys were so great.
Really interesting, because
but the thing is, I'm in Ohio. I'm in Ohio. You're just in Illinois, but I don't remember anything about Off-Broadway, at least in Central Ohio area. So
we at that time we toured the East Coast and then the West Coast heavily, trying to get something big going with some of the bigger bands. But all the radio play was in the Midwest. I always tell the same story. We had like hits on small Kankakee, Illinois. We'd be number 1 in Kankakee, and some, like, where's that? But a small town in Illinois. But we had a lot of number 1 hits, and people would play the album kind of like a Beatles album. Like you take the first cut and then the third cut and play it. People buy the record and all that. So we were spoiled in the Midwest. But then as soon as we leave the Midwest, competition was fierce out in Los Angeles.
Oh, I bet.
Fierce.
Well, the thing I wanted to ask you about, of course, you get signed, the Knack gets signed. Was Atlantic looking for an act? Like, I don't want to, because I don't know. Do you consider do you guys consider yourselves a power pop band or just a rock band?
No, it's definitely power pop.
Okay. I just want to make sure, because like I said before we recorded, like some bands really don't like that label power pop. They just go, well, we're just a rock band. We don't want to, but think about it. The Knack was signed. I mean, was Atlantic looking for an act, like a Knack type of act to put on their roster? Because when the Knack got signed, 2020 got signed, there were a lot of these other power pop bands, they're trying to compete with the Knack and all that. And 1979, that time's in, or did you predate the Knack? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, well, that's a great question, because at the time, I try to keep saying this, nobody knows at that time. You just go with what you do. And we did not want to be the normal rock band. It's right there in the music. You can hear it. It's like, oh, that's too much like that other group or something. So again, the songs were written to be popular songs with a pop influence. Very easy to put together at that time. Today, it would be almost impossible to write those songs again, because you'll
never see that again. I don't
No,
think.
that whole
No.
time being creative where they'd say, oh, you can do that in that section, you can do that in that.
Not now.
No, well, you were talking about 1971. That was even crazier then. You could just do anything. I mean, Neil Young and people like that back
Mhm.
then, and Jimi Hendrix, he was huge. And I mean, his radio hits were small compared to him. You know, I mean, he was at Woodstock. I mean, that's incredible.
Well, I remember when I was a kid, I hate to keep going back to when I was a kid, but when I was like 13, I remember when the Knack came out, and it was like one of those moments. Because think about it, you're in that whole disco movement during that time, you know, radio, and the fact that My Sharona was a big hit.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yeah.
it was like a breath of fresh air because I was a big Beatle fan, you know,
Right, right.
and that's what I like about you guys. Because of course I'm still a big Beatle fan. They are always number one. But when I heard Off-Broadway, I couldn't believe you were so British sounding to me. You don't sound like an American band. You sound like a British band to me. And I think Cliff's vocals, I mean, I think the guy really must have really liked John Lennon a lot. I'm not saying he sounds like John Lennon, but he has those vocal tendencies that he can just belt them out. Not like a Robin Zander, but more like a John Lennon.
True. Yeah. Well,
Um,
there was a
it's
lot of,
very unique. He was very unique. And your band just
Right.
sounded like you could have been in that British invasion period if you wanted to be. I just
Right.
think I
Well,
just love it.
absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Maybe you're hitting the nail on the head, because a lot of those influences were, we would have a few cover tunes we would do during a show,
Mhm.
and they were all, I mean, we would do She Said by the Beatles in a whole different 3/4 version, you know, trying to be a little different, you know, at that time. And so we were trying to use our influences that we liked and bring them into the band. There was they would let me stretch out on long guitar solos, not in the way that it would be like a Van Halen solo at the time. It
Right.
would be like me stretching out in my way. So they gave me lots of places to play. And at the time, the DJs would come and see us. They all knew how we played, so they would see a live show that was totally different than the record, right? We weren't going out and playing the record note for note. They would see this kind of improvising band, and then they'd go and play the record. So they had both visions of how we would do things.
Mhm.
And that's what paid off for us in the Illinois area. People would come and see it. It would be like, I mean, there's like any band live, they're way better than their record, or more exciting.
Well, it's
maybe.
like Cheap Trick. To see Cheap Trick, you see him live, you know,
Yeah,
really.
right.
Though I must say, I like those Tom Werman albums. I like everything well,
Right. It's
that's a different
exactly
show.
like that.
But,
It's
you know.
both. You would like the Beatles, but then if you saw them live, you'd go, I like that too, right?
Right.
It's not
Well,
like the record.
when I did that show, because I was so taken with that first record, that was the first thing I picked up. I was so taken with it. I had to do a show, and I never do shows by myself. I had to go, and I just said, "You've got to check this out, Off-Broadway on. You've got to check it out. Go to Discogs. I was so taken with it, and then people would leave comments saying exactly how great you guys were back in the day, and how incredible Cliff was as a front man. Just like you guys were like
Yeah.
on a, I'm not taking anything away from Jim, but people were talking,
No.
oh yeah, I used to see him all the time because I'm from Chicago. Oh my God, we go down and see him. They
Right.
were just incredible. And people would just rave how great you guys were live. I mean, I totally missed that, you know?
Yeah.
Man, I wish I could have been there.
There's a movie called The Money Pit with Tom Hanks. And if you watch the scene where he's going up the stairs, there's a picture of an Off-Broadway album. He was a big fan too. And so when you have all these people around you telling you
Mhm.
that you're going to be huge, you start to believe it. And then as things unravel in the business, now I'm not complaining, but it's a lot of business that it takes you, for Cheap Trick to get where they got. That was huge with Budokan and Japan and all that.
Mhm.
It's huge to get into the business the right way. And those breaks, the Knack, I'm sure he told you some of the good things and some of the things that, well, if this would have gone this way.
Yeah. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prescott's a great
Yeah.
interview. You get a
Yeah.
chance, go
When
on
we,
my channel,
turned
look for that interview because it was
I
incredible.
will.
Yeah, we
In
will.
fact,
That guy's great.
so when we opened for the Police up in Milwaukee, they pulled up in a little van,
Yeah,
Sting and
uh-huh.
right. And we're in the big tour bus, we got, girls all over the place and everything. And they look like, how can this band become so big? And years later, of course, right, the Police. But at the time, that was like their first tour from England, three English guys touring around a little van with their instruments, it's, who knows what's going to happen. So for us, just that you're sitting here interviewing us is great, who knows?
Well, I just think I just love it. I don't know. I'm like a big fanboy.
All it's gonna
I
take
want to
is
mention something. Did you guys just have what was your deal with Atlantic? Did you have like a 2-album deal, or
yes, yeah.
is that what you
And it was
had?
the biggest record deal ever in the history of Atlantic Records. I'm not kidding. Nobody had been offered that kind of money. The reason that Atlantic had to offer us that kind of money was because I told you, Jimmy Iovine, Richard Perry, they were all offering us tons of money. CBS and all, they're offering us tons of money. And Atlantic said, you know what? Deal over. Here's the biggest amount of money anybody's ever been offered. And we took it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But only a 2-album deal. Because I always wondered, I'm going, well, did they get dropped after the second album? Or was it just a
definitely.
2-out? You did get dropped. They didn't re-sign you or anything?
So then we started shopping the third record. There's actually a third record.
There's a third record? Well, I know it's not this record.
No.
But there's really a third record? Why?
Right. And
who has the rights to it? You should put it out.
Well, I don't. Yeah. So, and Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick produced it.
Did he? That'd be
Yeah.
great.
So then they started shopping it around, trying to get some interest, and nobody picked it up. So we had everything going for us. Great record, but.
So what year would that have been? What year did you? Okay, you did 79, you did 80, so you did the third record. So, was that right at? Were you still on Atlantic when you recorded it, and they rejected it?
No. We were done with
You
Atlantic.
were done with Atlantic. Why didn't they re-sign you? Why didn't they say, okay?
I don't. Yeah, you're asking the wrong person.
Okay, I'm just curious because you would have thought. I'm just saying, 2 great records. Yeah, I know the second album didn't sell as well. Okay, but you would think they'd go, well, we gave these guys a big deal. We should, I think, let's do another third. I don't understand how these record companies think.
No, and I don't either. At the time, I was getting calls like, oh, you can be in another band, the even bigger band in LA. There's a big band in LA that needs a guitar player. I was getting calls like that. And I'm like, well, I don't know what's going on. So we started recording and writing a lot of songs. We were writing a lot of songs at the time. And, you're around the right people. Who knows? So
this third record.
Yeah,
you might as well put it out.
Well, it floats around. There's people out there with stuff.
Oh, okay. Well, I've never even. I'd love to hear it.
Cliff put out an album with the Roses, and he has a song called Holiday that was produced by Rick Nielsen, and actually Rick plays or sings on it, right? He sings a little bit on it. Yeah. So that's on one of Cliff's kind of solo. It's a solo collection that he has. But otherwise, the entire record was not put out.
Yeah. Well, how did you feel that the third one? How did you feel about the third one? Were you happy with it? It just never. It's killer.
Yeah. Well, I wrote all the songs with Cliff on them, so we loved the. Yeah, and then we recorded at the exact same studio as the second album.
Okay.
It was the first ever. So the sound was the same. Rick Nielsen sitting there with his sushi, producing us. John, I think you can do that guitar solo better. Okay, Rick, I will.
Yeah, I would think he'd be kind of snarky and always, I don't know.
Oh, he's great.
Back in I've told this story 1,000 times. 1986, they played the Marion Popcorn Festival. Okay. So it was Standing on the Edge tour. And I worked at a guitar store at Eagle Guitar when I was a young guy in college, and I worked there, and I had a 1961 Les Paul Jr. I was selling that I traded some other guy for it. I had an Ibanez, I traded it for it. 1961 Les Paul Jr. TV yellow, blah, blah, blah. And he came down and said, hey, you have any guitars? I said, well, of course. But he came in like he owned the place, went clear in the back where we gave guitar lessons, just did a whole sweep of the whole thing. Said, okay, what about the SG? I said, well, I'm selling it. You want, he said, I'll give you $400 for it. Bring it up to the, downtown to where the stage was, and you can hang out backstage, hang out, in the trailer and everything, and I'll pay you for it. So he played it. I said, sure. Now I wished I would have kept it because, it's a Les Paul Jr. from 1961, but they weren't going for that much then,
Right.
So
Well,
anyway, we
every
got to
time-
hang out, and he bought it and he played that guitar on the last song of the show, on the encore.
every time we would hit, we would call all the music stores that, were selling vintage instruments and all that.
Mhm.
And Rob and I would go and, well, we'd call them. Sometimes they'd come to the hotel room, because we're in a big hotel. We're in, like the most expensive hotel in the town. And we'd say, can you bring all your Vox guitars and all your Vox amps? And they would come in with
All
their
your
stuff.
boxes.
Right. And we'd go, we'll take that. We'll take that. We had money coming out of our pockets like you wouldn't believe. For guitars were cheap back then. So we'd take, I'll take that. So I give the roadies, I bought this Tennessee, and it's like, oh, that's a cool guitar. I was Chet Atkins. And so we would
I had a
stuff on
Nashville once.
Do you?
I did. I had a 79 Nashville, and boy, oh boy, I wish I never got rid of it. It was
Oh,
beautiful.
yeah, I know.
Beautiful.
Well, all those guitars I would buy, I would write a song on. So every guitar had a song with it, right? And then you don't have the guitar, you go, wow, that would have been nice to keep like that. But so we when we got to Seattle though, I had to look up Floyd Rose, the guy who makes the and so I went to his house, and he's just, like a small little, this is before he hit it really big, And so we're sitting there and he's showing us this thing that wouldn't stay in tune for nothing, right? And he's showing you the Floyd Rose going, well, it's supposed to stay in tune. We're like, I'll stick with the, because I use a Strat, man. And so back then, you have no idea who you're talking to. If I would have used that Floyd Rose in a minute, right? I mean, but it was like at the time, like, well, I like the Strat better. I like the way it feels better.
So did you guys, I don't know, do you have any like stories like who did you guys tour with back in the day? I know you've had to open for Cheap Trick tons of times, but there any other bands, any great
Jim's,
bands?
that was
well, I saw in 1981, I saw Off-Broadway open for Cheap Trick at the Granada Theater. Had second row for that one, which was
nice.
Which was pretty cool. And but yeah, I saw you guys open for UFO, Blackfoot.
Wow.
And yeah, who else?
Well, and then bands would come and see us too. So like Aerosmith would come and see us because they heard about us, So all of a sudden we're hanging out with the guys from Aerosmith. And like I said, I can't describe this enough, but there was a time when it was no big deal to hang out with what today are living legends, right? I mean, you couldn't get near these people. Back then, they'd come and see us. No, they'd be standing right there, and you'd go like, oh, that's that guy from, that band. And it was no big deal. And they wanted to see you, they wanted to get to know you, just like we would like to get to know them, right? I mean, Blue Oyster Cult, when we toured with them, it was like, friendly guys, the Cars, all friendly. These are all friendly guys. Like, hey, you're in a band, we're in a band, and we're all trying to make it. So, but today that would be impossible to do. I don't know if you're even allowed backstage to, right? I met Mick Ronson.
I'm sure you probably are, but
I met Mick Ronson backstage when he was touring with Ian Hunter. We opened the show for Ian Hunter, right? Here's my idol sitting there. He's got this red shirt on and red shoes on. So the next day, guess how I dressed?
Just like Mick Ronson, of course.
Yeah, right. Who doesn't show up there with red shoes and a red shirt?
Yeah. It's a good look.
But you got to hang out with a lot of people. But it's like the Knack. You've heard those stories where, we're playing at the Whiskey, and then, one day Stephen Stills is out in the audience, or Bruce Springsteen's in the audience, and then they go, hey, can I come up and jam? But people would just come see him all the time. Of course, you're out in LA, you're Ray Manzarek's hanging out, everybody's hanging out. So it's probably like a normal type of thing,
Right. Yeah, it really was a great time to be a musician. There wasn't the distance between the audience and the performer, you know. It just wasn't. You could meet a lot of great people and they would meet you, and that's great. But
Yeah.
now what we did, we just did a show at a place called The Venue in Aurora. And I want to just mention this before
Oh, yeah.
if you cut us off. One
Oh,
thing
we're
that
good. However long you want to
well,
talk.
it just really surprised me. And Jim asked the audience how many people had seen the band before.
Mhm.
And I was shocked on how few people had seen the band. They were there because of the record. They didn't have any idea what they were going to see, right?
Mhm.
That's a strange feeling to go, I love this record, I want to go see the band still 40 years later, isn't that? I mean, that's to me huge.
Wow. I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I got this record. I bought this record.
You're
40
preaching to
years
the
ago.
choir right here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when that happened, you realize that as long as they were all happy, they're not there. They don't have any preconceived idea of what they're seeing. You know, I mean, like if you went saw a band, you said, "Oh, I'm expecting this," or "I want this to happen." They didn't have that, and they loved the show. I mean, the show went over great. So that's what we're doing right now is we go out and play, and we look at, and these people don't know what to expect, right? This next show we're doing, they're going to go, what's the what? You know, they're going to sit there. What's this? I got this record. What are you going to do? And
They think this is what Cliff Johnson looks like today.
yeah.
Most people say, "Oh,
Well,
or I saw you back in."
They're here for the music, for the
79 AD.
songs, you know.
And I'm just like, yeah.
They don't know who I am, though.
Who's that other guy?
Who's
Who's that guy with the
doing?
guitar? There was some guy to play this
Yeah.
hammer at one time, but I don't know who this guy is.
Right. He's got a telling guy. He can't be the right guy.
Can't be the right
Funny.
guy. Well, I just
Yeah.
want to add real quick because so you made the third album. You stayed together for another 3 years and toured and opened for people. I mean, what prompted you guys to
Yeah,
break
and
up
then-
that first time? Was it just nothing's gonna happen now?
Well, the first breakup was I mean, the breakup after being together for 5 years and then
Yeah.
seeing, you know, the way the business was working like that at 1982, 1983, the bands that were big then, Thompson Twins
It's a totally different world. Totally different world. Yep.
and shredding guitar became very, very popular, which was totally anti Off-Broadway. I mean, we weren't
Mhm.
trying to shred like to go into that genre. And
But think about it. Even Cheap Trick had to adapt. And I'm not a big fan of any of the, the Doctor. Not really
Yeah.
my thing. But a lot of these bands, well, you know how it was. Heart, one of those bands, they had to totally transform into something else from what they were. Heart, Cheap Trick. But look, one of those bands that made that transition really well is Aerosmith.
yeah,
How they were able to do it, and they were totally accepted. You listen to FM rock radio now, and still those 80s Aerosmith songs still get played. They were a band that was able to morph with that change. You have to applaud them. Whether you like
absolutely.
that 80s stuff or not, they were able to change with the
We
time.
played a small club in 1978. We played a small club called Beginnings, maybe 300 people there. We opened for AC/DC, and AC/DC's on stage, and and there's a small little stage, and they're jumping around. We're standing up in the balcony. We had a bigger following at the time. I mean, they were AC/DC, Australian band, yeah, really good, all that.
Right.
Who knows? 25 years later, 40 years later, 45 years later, they are doing exactly the same material.
They never
and it
change.
clicked,
The
right?
same shtick
Yeah.
over and over again.
And
No
we were doing
deviation.
the same thing. We're not going to change. We're not going to try add synthesizers or whatever, eurythmics. And
Yeah.
so then it just becomes like, well, there's nothing left for us to do right now. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I get it. Well, there's a radio station in Columbus that just had their 50th anniversary, QFM 96, and had some of the old DJs on there reminiscing. And the one
Yeah.
guy, one of the old DJs said, yeah, when we were starting out with this AOR album oriented rock, we really didn't know what to play. We were playing Stevie Wonder, we'd play Aerosmith, we'd play all these different bands. You know, back in the 70s, holy crap, it was like the Wild West kind of, not like, you know, pirate radio or anything like that, but they were saying we were trying to figure out what we were doing. And there was a band called AC/DC that was very underground. I mean, if you think about AC/DC when they started out, that's not real commercial or anything. That's kind of out there. You might not think about it now that way, but back in, you know, 77 or something like that, but they started playing them. And now they're, of course, they're accepted. But back then, playing AC/DC on FM radio was a little bit out there, you know?
So
I don't know
went
where
to
I
see-
was. John, I don't know where I was going with that, but I'm
You're
just
going
saying.
the same direction I'm going.
Okay.
So I saw Queen there were about 200 people. We were seeing, me and my buddies went to go see Queen, and we saw these grown men walk out with ladies' clothes on. And we go, these guys are pretty good.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody else, I mean, they weren't big yet. I think they were touring their first time in, and, you know, I was a big fan of Brian May and all that. So you never know who you're watching. You don't know if you'll never see them again, or they're bigger now than I think, Freddie's been dead 30 years and they're bigger now than, you know, so.
Well, you ever play do you know the Newport in Columbus, Ohio? It used to be called the Agora. There was an Agora, there's an Agora in Cleveland, still is. But there used to be many Agoras, I think, but there was the Agora that was like on the OSU campus in Ohio. I don't know if you guys ever played there or not. But Queen played there.
I'm sure we did. I'm sure we did. Our tours were all the top rooms. We get there and they said Bruce Springsteen just played here.
Yeah.
But,
all right, you've been there then.
Right.
But Queen was like, I think it was Queen 2 tour. So what would that be? 73, 74 or something? But a buddy of mine went to that. No one knew who they were, and they were dressed all in those gown things.
Right.
And he said they were incredible. But the Newport's tiny. You could never fit Queen in there now, you know.
No,
not now.
That's how it was.
They were incredible. But you might have saw them on that tour, maybe. I don't know how big of a venue that was.
You know, I just use them as an example because my daughter saw the TV some movie, and she goes, "It's a good band," and I go, "You should see the real Queen, not the movie Queen," you know. And so it's the same thing with you're kind of talking. You're talking around the same subject, I think, that you don't know what you're seeing at the time,
right?
And then they either become very famous or not so famous, and that's Off-Broadway, not so famous. I mean, there's still people here in the Illinois area, but it's not like Queen or Zeppelin or something like that.
Part of my show is, I cover some other bands too, but I like to cover the bands that could use more love. And I was so taken by your material. No, this is why I reached out, because
we're laughing because you're one of a few, I must say.
Well, I'm different. I'm never going to get tons. I just hit like 1,200 subscribers. I've had like a big boom. So I think there's a lot of people digging my content because people want to get turned on to stuff. They don't like what's going on now. There are so many older bands that are out there that, you know, people go, "Well, Grant, why don't you listen to some newer stuff?" I said, "Well, crap, there's so many older bands that I haven't even been turned on to. I'm still trying to discover that." And it's precisely why we're here today, because I was so taken by the quality of the material, the Tom Worman connection, Tom Worman talking you guys up on this show, and the clips that they played. I just you were right in my ballpark. So I just wanted to, hopefully by doing this, talking a little bit, I want you to promote some gigs or what you guys are going to be. Maybe we can turn on some people. If we turn on 2 people onto this record, I'm happy. No, seriously, I think this is a record. If you're into power pop, you're into Cheap Trick, you're into 2020, anything like that, for God's sakes, people, go find this record, because it'll change your life. I swear to God. And if you can find this, get this too. If you can get it. That's the thing. I know that I do have to tell you something though. I was able to go on Amazon and order this. So evidently this is still in print. I told Jim about this because I didn't even know if it was in print anymore, because I'm coming into you guys green. I ordered this from Amazon. It came back as a CDR. It wasn't a factory press CD.
Yeah.
It was through Atlantic or whatever, but I didn't want a CDR. So then I went to Discogs and ordered one that was a real CD. So I've got both, but I'm going, you sending me a CDR? I mean, it sounds the
Yeah,
same,
yeah.
but you know what I mean. It's like, what?
Well,
So I don't know.
well,
Is
I'm
this
gonna
still
send
in
you-
print or not in print? I don't know. But they had it
I'm gonna
brand
send
new.
you a copy
Go ahead.
of our, we did a live show in 78. And this is before the band got signed to Atlantic.
Okay.
And you can hear the beginnings of like the power pop band, and this is only for your ears only.
Okay.
The difference between the before Tom Werman, pre Tom Werman, and Tom Werman's producing.
Right.
So what he heard, right? So what he heard was us playing in 78, all this stuff you'll hear going on, and then you've heard the record now of what
Mhm.
Tom Werman did with that. So yeah, a lot of credit to him taking this raw material. Because when I listen to that 1978 record, I go, oh, it's so raw, it's so fun. But thank God he produced it so the rest of the public could get into it.
Mhm.
Without that, it's just, it's like anything. It's kind of raw, and you might hear it, but when somebody produces a record, it's fantastic.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think his work is great. I
Yeah.
love
Well,
all
George
of this
Martin-
stuff.
And George Martin for the Beatles did the same thing. He took a raw group
Exactly.
of guys. They were turned down by a record. I think their first label, they were turned down. Decca turned them down, saw no talent in the Beatles. And then George Martin, the rest is history, of course.
Well, at least with the Tom Werman Productions, this is what I like about him, is that your guitar tones on that record, top notch. And it sounds
yeah.
like you. Now, this is my point. If you listen to the Tom Werman Productions of Cheap Trick, I know what Rick Nielsen sounds like live, okay? He sounds like he does on those Tom Werman albums, like he sounds live. Yeah, the Tom Werman albums are a
Yes,
little
yes,
bit more polished. Yes. Some people might not like that. But I like Rick Nielsen sounding like Rick Nielsen because, you know how guitar players are. Everybody has a distinct tone. Now, if you're Ronnie Montrose, you sound like he didn't really have a distinct tone. He's a good guitar player, but he didn't stand out. The real good guitar players have a unique sound. I'm going to throw out Ace Frehley. You listen to Ace Frehley play a guitar solo, you know it's Ace Frehley. You listen, you say Rick Nielsen, you can hear Rick play. God knows you know it's Rick Nielsen. Well, same with Eddie Van Halen. You obviously know what Eddie Van Halen sounds like. But there are some Ted Nugent, you know what Ted sounds like. And for some reason, those Tom Werman productions, the guitar players, those players sound like they really do. And I like that because some of that later we're really going on a tangent, but some of that later Cheap Trick stuff, I don't know where the Cheap Trick sound kind of dissolved. Rick doesn't sound like Rick anymore. I know I'm going totally on a tangent.
Yeah, I would.
But you guys,
I'm not going to go down that path. But I will say,
well, you know what I mean. Certain things, but both of these records, I think, sound great. This one's a little bit more raw than this one, I think. This one's definitely really power poppy. This not so much. This is a little heavier record, I think. Not taking anything away from it. It's a little bit different, but both of these records, songwriting's top notch. And that's the one thing I'm really impressed by you guys is the songwriting and the guitar playing. The whole band is great. See, when you capture lightning in a bottle. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Atlantic gave you a big bonus signing this. You guys were great. So whatever. I'm just being all fanboy. So
no, it's the people that discover new stuff. It's just I do the same thing. I teach guitar 3 nights a week, and I see people discovering music, and most of the time they're discovering older music. Like young kids are discovering old. I mean, I have teenage girls learning. I have to learn yesterday. They go, I have to learn yesterday. You go, of all the songs you want to learn, it's Paul McCartney's Finger Picking.
Well, thank God.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's amazing how it just stands up over the test of time. And that's what well, that's why we're going to go and play April 1st at the Des Plaines Theater. People
Mhm.
want to go and, well, can these guys really play? Are they still alive?
Are these guys still living?
Still around.
Well, the thing is, there is hope because there's a record store in town called Pat's. It's Endangered Species. And there's always a lot of young kids, high school kids going in there and buying used records. They're always in there looking for like Fleetwood Mac Rumors.
Mhm.
Just an example. The store cannot keep that in stock. So there is hope for this younger generation.
Yeah.
Not that they're watching this. I hit some younger people, but it's mostly, older people trying to relive their youth. But like I said, if I can turn some people onto your stuff, that's all I want to do, because I just think it needs to be out
Right.
there,
Well, there's a story where George Harrison was, his son was coming home from school,
Mhm.
and the kids were teasing him and singing Yellow Submarine to him. And he got home and he said, Dad, why are they doing this, right? So my daughter, she's studying medicine. She's studying at Florida State right now, and they asked her to do some kind of they wanted to draw blood from people, get a blood drive.
Yeah.
So they dragged her along, and she goes into the radio station, and they're doing a blood drive. And she says to the DJ, "Why do you have my dad's CD on the stack right there?" And she goes, and the DJ goes, "Your dad was in Off-Broadway? Because I'm going to play the record." And she goes, "Yeah, but I don't really know what that is." She has no idea what Off-Broadway is. She's 20 years old, right?
She knows you were on it. She knows you're in
Yeah,
the band.
that's about all she
they
knows, right?
She doesn't really care about it, Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
So I guess I told her the same thing that George Harrison said. I guess I should have told you a little bit about the band before you went to the radio station. But she's heard it now, and the DJ was real nice to her and interviewed her a little bit, and said, "So what's it like, your dad and all that?"
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. So now she's a fan, and like I said, at a bonfire, people started asking me questions, like, oh, they were here. I'm sitting at a bonfire at Florida State, and they're playing Stay in Time, and all the parents there are going, "Wow, this is really good." They'd never heard the band,
Well,
right? Oh, your dad's in a band. People say, "Oh, your dad's in a band." That usually means what? You're playing a Bob Seger cover or something, at the bar, right?
Mhm.
They're like, "Wow, that's like really a song." And
Yeah,
all
well,
that. So
yeah.
it takes a while for people to go, oh, they listen, they hear it, right?
Mhm.
So now I've got more fans down in Florida.
Evidently. Well, I'm trying to build up your fan base in Ohio.
I got
Good.
My daughter's in a sorority now with 250 girls. I'm going to try to get them to be all Off-Broadway fans.
Well,
Sorry.
hey, well, no, you gotta, I don't know. I don't know how you get, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but they might be
Well,
turned on.
there's one more thing that really helped the band, and it's not going to be very obvious right now, but we were pretty well-dressed, good-looking men at the time. I was 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And we did pretty good. We did pretty good playing when we would go into a new place. We did pretty well with encouraging the, I don't know, the whole look and everything, trying to get, it's attractive. When you're attractive, you attract people. And we've
Right.
attracted a lot of people that way too. It wasn't, like guys dressed today. It's sometimes hard to get into the music if you watch them, and then you have to listen about, you got, oh, that's, some look like criminal. I want to say some guys look like criminals now. They play great music, but they look like criminals.
They
We
look
did
like
not look-
criminals. No, you guys
Right.
were all right. You dress for the part,
yeah. So we had a lot of
it was
success there.
it
We
was
keep-
the 70s. So I don't know.
Right. Yes, it was.
So,
yeah.
okay. So you guys got back together 4 years ago, did you say? What prompted that reunion? Why did you
Right,
guys get
right.
back together?
So, gosh, Grant, I'm telling you too much stuff, but
Well,
so
we're almost to the
called me up.
modern era. We're almost there.
well, so Cliff called me up and he said that they want the original lineup back together because he's, you know, and no offense to Cliff, but he was always trying something new. He'd get together with this guy, he'd get together with this guy, and he never really could put it together. So somebody suggested, why don't you put together the original lineup from that album, from that first
The
album.
first record.
So he called me and said, do you want to do it? And you know what I said, of course, right? Absolutely not. No way would I ever want to do that, right?
Is that
Just
what
like
you
I did the
really
first-
said?
Yeah.
You said no,
just like the
you don't
first
want to go,
time.
you didn't want to go back? Oh, okay, I got
There's
you.
no way I want to do that, right?
Okay.
So then, you know, of course I thought about it, and so what do you got to lose, right? I love Cliff. I mean, he was a great guy. And so we did the show and we had such a good time. So that's when we started doing more of it. But then his health just kept deteriorating to the point where
No.
it was hard. It was really hard. The band was playing great, and then he was weak, really weak. That's all I'll say. So then we were like I said, then when I don't know who called Jim, but there were a lot of guys going, oh, I can do the job. And I don't want to mention their names, but they're all big star guys. You know, they have big following and all that, and it's tempting, but they didn't have the ingredient that we need, you know, a band needs. You need a singer that works together with the band, not a guy who stands at the front and goes, okay, you guys hit it. You know, we didn't need that, you know. Not many bands really want that, to have that kind of, you want a front man, but you don't want to have a guy who's like pushing everybody back, you know. I mean, that's why I'm a fan of certain groups that they work together, right?
Yeah, they're
no matter how big. So then when Cliff's health deteriorated, and we did a couple shows together, and we had a great time. You know, he was very close to me musically too. So he would stand behind the music with me. Like, we wrote a lot of those songs together, right? So it was very easy for him to stand up and say, hey, we're going to do this song. You know, it wasn't like he's doing it, we were doing the song, right? So that helped a lot, the camaraderie. But then as he got sicker and sicker, everybody could see that it's not good. It's not, some of the concert promoters, I'll be honest with you, they could see it too. They're like, what's going on? And it's like, well, he's having trouble. You know, he's having trouble breathing. He had lung problems. He had all kinds of health issues. And he didn't talk about it, but you could see it. So then when Jim came in, we just picked right up where we left off. Your first major gig was that Rockford show. I mean, here we are, Cheap Tricks, you know, they're standing around side of the stage, all the guitars are out and everything. It's like, Jim, fill in. Right?
He did it.
And again, Grant, and I don't want to go and belabor this, but I got to say this. If you've never seen the band, like if you had never seen the band, you would have walked up there and gone, I got my money's worth. I got the album. You would have had to sign it, and you would have gotten the show.
Well, you got the right guy then.
Right. So when we walked off, we went, well, let's keep it going. And we have been keeping it going. So here and there.
Good for you guys. Well, how often you guys playing now, and what's coming up for you guys?
Well, we're trying to do once a month, maybe every other month, but we're just trying to do the shows that satisfy a bigger crowd. So, we're doing the theater kind of thing. Our next show is April 1st, John said, at Des Plaines Theater, which is about 600 seats. So we'll be doing that with one other band, and those are the kind of shows that we like to do. The venue was sold out. It was a smaller venue, but very interesting for us and even John as well, because this is the first show that I've ever done where everyone is seated at a table, and they literally the song would end and we would get claps and cheers, but there's nobody jumping up and down. There's nobody saying anything. They're waiting for us to talk. They're waiting for us to introduce the next song. I mean, extremely polite and interested, and some had never seen us, but so it's a different audience, I guess, than the bar. We have played some bars as well too, and have a real good reaction at those too. So we're kind of just looking for the right fit for us. We all have outside projects and families and kids and things and lots to do, but we definitely want to keep it going. We're going to. And
have you seen the YouTube video of us in 1981 in Champaign? Have you seen that on?
No, I'll go look. I'll look for it. No, I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah, it's like an hour show. We did a show down in Champaign, and it's the reason I bring that up is because then when we fast forward to now, that's what we kind of use as I use it as a template to say, well, this is how the band performed. These are the kind of, moves we did back then. Yeah, we're older now, but it wasn't. It was rock show, but it was power pop. Okay. So it was a power pop rock show in 1981. Still is today. It's the same kind of show. It's not we don't come down on it's not
it's not like Spinal Tap. Is that what you're trying to say?
No.
yeah.
It's still the same kind of low key. The audience is sitting there going, "What's next?" That kind of thing. And I know for a fact I went through when I get done playing, I walk through the entire audience to see what people say.
Yeah.
If they're going,
well,
what was that?
What the hell's happening? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you
And so,
guys? Well, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I remember at the venue again, just like the kind of surprise, kind of how you are. This is how you're coming off to me. You heard this album, you're going like, I'm surprised, right? And that's where people are. They're like they're surprised. Like, well, why isn't why? It's that questioning. Like, you just start questioning things. So we'll keep. This next show will be great. I hope you can fly in. Should we buy him a ticket?
Yeah, you're in, Grant.
Yeah.
Show up and we got
What
you.
is it, a 6-hour drive from where you're at?
Yeah, I'm in Central Ohio.
Yeah.
I could probably. When is the gig again?
It's a Saturday, April 1st.
I could probably do that.
Yeah. It'd be fun.
If you go, where's a good place to play out by you?
Wow.
Where would you recommend Off-Broadway?
Oh boy. Well, they tore down the Alrosa Villa. That's gone. The Newport's still there. We used to have an amphitheater, Polaris Amphitheater. They destroyed that. I don't know where anyone plays really. In Columbus? Oh,
yeah.
Asa Clubs. I think there's a place called Asa Clubs or something. I've never been there, but what else? There's probably some other venues, but I don't get out like I used to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know where you guys would play.
Well,
like I said, I didn't know you guys until Tom Werman recommended you. So it's all new to me.
Right.
Well, you guys, I
got to look up the Knack and see where they're.
The Knack.
Where do you think the Knack is playing next?
Well, the Knack. Well, I do know that. Something happened. Well, they weren't doing anything. Well, because it's just down to Burton and Prescott.
Right.
And they don't really have a permanent drummer, and then Doug's dead. So, but I know I'm going on the 80s cruise here in March, beginning of March, and they were going to play on the cruise, but then something happened and they canceled them. I don't know, but they must have got an offer to reform to play on this 80s cruise. But then I don't know. But now they're not. I was all happy because I went, well, geez, Prescott might remember me in that interview. It wasn't that long ago. So, but now he's not going to be on it. So, oh well.
But there's all kinds of people that we've met over the years and all that, and a lot of them have been very helpful in keeping things going like that. Like Ron Onesti at the Arcada Theater. He's a big fan of the music, and he grew up listening to it. So he's ready to book us. I'm pretty sure at any time. He's had us on. We opened for. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't even say this. Pablo Cruz.
Okay.
We opened for Pablo Cruz. The Tubes we opened for recently. This is recent, and so he'll put us on a show and say, bring some people, and it's like no problem. That's easy in Illinois, but we have a great time, and it's only a small hour show, maybe 45 minutes, something like that. So there might be one of those coming.
I saw the Tubes back in '83. Dig this. This was at the Songbird Center in Mansfield, Ohio. '83. Marshall Crenshaw opened. This was the Field Day tour. They opened, and then the Tubes played, and then Hall & Oates played. I think it was the H2O tour. But holy crap, Marshall Crenshaw. I was really into Marshall Crenshaw. They were just
I see
absolutely
the album
fabulous.
behind you.
Yeah, love Marshall.
That's
And then
funny,
the Tubes were
Off-Broadway-
fabulous. The Tubes were fabulous back then.
Yeah,
That was a great
Off-Broadway
show.
opened for Hall & Oates. We opened for Hall & Oates, and I don't think they were, this is back again.
Yeah.
They weren't Hall & Oates yet. They were just kind of like, they got a hit.
Mhm.
And so we would open the show for them because they wanted to fill the theater. That was the big thing. Why you put two bands on there. It wasn't exposure. It was like you wanted to fill the theater.
Right.
And look at them now. I mean, they're wedding. They're like wedding music. Everybody has to have Hall & Oates at their wedding, right? So
Daryl Hall has his own TV show. So,
yeah, right.
what do you, just saying, you never know how things are going to turn out,
No.
It's like seeing Queen back in the
Yeah.
day, and they totally blew up. U2. It's like when U2, they used to play like the Newport. I remember one band. Do you remember the band called The Laws back in must have been 90, 91? I don't know, but they were like a power pop band. They were a British band. They only put out one record, and I was there. There's only like 20 people in the audience, but I thought it was brilliant. Or Jellyfish. You know the band Jellyfish? You familiar with Jellyfish?
No, but
Okay.
They put
think I
out two
should-
records back in the 90s.
So
Brilliant.
I was in a
Brilliant stuff.
band. I was in a different band in the 90s. I'd given up on rock music,
Mhm.
and I was doing really well in the country music world,
Okay.
down in Nashville. And so I didn't listen to anything from the 90s. Now, my wife's 15 years younger than I am, and she knows all that music. So she'll tell me, oh,
Okay.
you should listen to Jim Blossoms and this kind of stuff.
I do like that first Gin Blossoms album a lot.
Right. Thank God for her. Otherwise, I would have missed it. I was in Europe, touring Europe most of the time in the 90s. And so I had no idea what was going on
Okay.
here.
Yeah.
right?
There was a lot of great stuff you missed.
I did. I know.
Well,
and
that's the thing. I found you guys, there's so much stuff that I totally missed that, it's hard for me to catch up on anything new because there's so much great old stuff, I don't know. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So we got the gig coming up in April. That's cool. Yeah, I bet you I could zip over for that. 6 hours is nothing.
Yeah.
Well, it's I appreciate you interviewing me and Jim here, but the other guitar player, Rob,
Mhm.
he just got well again. Thank God, he's feeling good, and he's the weaver. We weave together through the show.
Right.
We weave our guitar
Weavers.
parts together, and then John Paston plays the bass guitar, and he was one of the founding. He actually I don't know if he gets credit for, but he was the guy who dragged Cliff around from band to band and said, we got to get this guy, we got to get this guy. They had gone to high school together, so they were very close at the time. So
Mhm.
he's playing, I just talked to him today. He says he's feeling better, but he's got health issues too. But he's got way more stories than I do. He can remember everything that happened.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember a lot of stuff.
Well,
I was there, but I don't know what happened. But he
well, the older you get, it seems like, there's all these memories, but they
no,
all
I don't
kinda
remember it
get-
even then.
Oh,
Even
you
then,
didn't
I don't
remember them? Okay.
No.
Well, that's fair.
No, but he was in the thick of things there. He would go on radio. So when we were touring the East Coast, we'd go to every radio station just like Elvis Presley did,
Mhm.
and go in and do a radio interview and try to get. Well, I wasn't doing the radio interviews. John Paston and Cliff would go and do them. So they were in the thick of things with, they would take a record off, Atlantic Records off, and then put our record on and play it for the audience and all that. So
Yeah.
he has way better memories of things like that. So if you ever talk to him, you're going to get an earful.
Wow.
I'm a blabbermouth, but
Well, you're doing
He's
fine.
got stories. Yeah.
Hell, your stories are
he's
great
got more
too.
stories. I just
Yeah.
talk.
Oh, you got great stories. I think it's all wonderful. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you guys coming on. I guess we've covered it.
Right. Well,
Um,
You really asked a lot of great questions, and I can't thank you enough, because doing interviews over the years, sometimes it would get too much on the guitar end, and then you
I
kind of
could
lose
go
your
that way.
audience. Like what kind of picks do you use? And then if it's just too generic, where you're just talking like, oh, that's good, yeah, that's good. This was just great for us to sit here.
Well,
and
I was
listen.
impressed when you were saying you'd be like in a big hotel room and you'd call up the guitar dealer and say, "Hey, do you have any Voxes? Were you like collecting Vox stuff or anything, or what? Or did you just throw Vox out for the hell of it? Were you into Voxes?"
No, I had
Rob is.
I had
Rob
four vintage Vox. If you watch this video, there are 4 vintage Vox AC30s on
Mhm.
stage with me every night, plus all my vintage Marshalls that I had to have.
Of
And then all my,
course. Of
right. I mean,
course.
you have to have them. So when we would call, we played the Playboy Club one time up in Wisconsin, and my amps didn't fit on the stage, of course, because it's the Playboy Club. It's made for a jazz group, right?
Uh-huh.
So they're opening up the ceiling, trying to stack up the amps. The roadies are doing all this
What
at
the
the Playboy.
hell? That's
We
crazy.
met a lot of beautiful women that night, though, I must say.
Well, I'm
Uh,
sure you did.
So, but the point is that we had equipment, and we would buy more equipment. We didn't need equipment. None of us needed equipment, but we would buy it as soon as we could find another. Oh, I need that. I need that.
See, I can't even imagine that.
And
But I can
your
imagine
guitar,
it, but I can't imagine it, huh?
well,
Well,
your guitar, Rob,
well,
he's a collector. He was a collector of those TV models, the Les Paul TV model.
mhm.
He had a bunch of them in different colors too. And so if you look on the one of the albums, he wrote red and green guitars because he couldn't
Yeah.
even list because he had a red and a green one. That was his
Yeah,
thing.
it's on this one, I think.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I can't remember, because it's like he didn't play rhythm. He played like everything, like whatever needed to play, he played it. It wasn't like a rhythm player, or it wasn't a lead player. It was like a guy who just did everything. And then he goes, well, I like the red one, I like the green one. Okay, whatever. So he would have bought your guitar in a minute.
Yeah, Rick
No
Nielsen
question.
beat him. Yeah, Rick Nielsen knew
Yeah.
what to buy. Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, I wish I kept
But
that guitar. But whatever, it is what it is. They weren't what
better
they are
story when you
now.
get,
You know.
it's, yeah. Well, when I'm gone, just stand outside my house. Mine will all be sitting on the curb. My kids have no idea what those things are.
You gotta, well, when you go, you better make sure you have all that written down, what to do with it,
It's
Well,
all on the
like all
curb.
my
Just-
records, all my CDs and all my albums and stuff. Holy crap. It's just gonna be like a free for all. My kids don't want any of this crap. They think
no,
I'm
it's a
nuts.
landfill. It's all being the landfill. Don't worry.
All my guitars, my amps, whatever. I don't know.
I joke about it, but I tell my wife, I said, so the other day I had this guitar my daughter was selling on a reverb.com.
Mhm.
And I said, that guitar is about $1,200 that you're getting rid of. She goes, really? I was going to take 200 for it. I said,
No concept of what things are worth at all.
Yeah.
No.
no, it's an old Supro, Emily. Just take your time and get a little more money for it. So
Yeah, a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
But I will say this is on a tangent, but nowadays, okay, I'm like a big Rickenbacker nut. I love Rickenbackers. Okay. I've had all kinds of Rickenbacker stuff I wish I'd never sold. Okay. But back in the day before the internet, I would never see a Rickenbacker like in Marion, Ohio. You'd never see one,
right.
They just don't pop up. It's not like there's I mean, you go on the internet, there's plenty of them, but normally
I know where you can
you
get
don't
one right.
see them.
I know where you can get one right now. So I did a show in Rockford with Off-Broadway back in 1980.
Yeah.
And I tripped over the monitor, and my Rickenbacker cracked in half.
Yeah.
And I gave it to the club owner, and he put it on the wall up there. So it's sitting up on the wall in this club in Rockford. You can just go and take it.
Nice. It's probably, what year was it? Do you remember what year it was?
1980.
Yeah, about 1980.
Well, they
Those
still were
guitars are
fairly made like they were in the 60s in 1980.
They were so fragile. The
Oh,
necks
yeah.
were just so fragile on those things. They're really
Nothing
to-
to them.
great to play, though.
They sound great. Those Rickenbacker 12 strings. My
Then listen
favorite
to,
guitar sound on the planet. You know, anything Roger McGuinn, the Birds, 8 Miles
then
High.
listen to on
The
Quick
best
Turns.
12 string sound ever. What?
Listen to Quick Turns then, and the song is called
Are You Alone?
No, the song Quick Turns
Okay.
has a guitar solo done on a Rickenbacker.
Oh, okay. I'll take notice. But
And I noticed a power pop guy one time.
Oh, go ahead.
A power pop guy told me that's your best solo, and I go, well, I didn't think it was the best solo, but it is a power pop solo on a Rickenbacker.
So on Quick Turns.
you might like it.
Okay, I'll listen to that again.
Yeah, the song Quick Turns.
All right. Well, see, there's more trivia, kids. We're learning all kinds of stuff on this show.
Yeah.
But the only point that I wanted to say is that
Now we're really down.
the
Now we've
internet,
really gone away from.
Yeah, you're getting
I
into the
know,
guitar
but
thing.
the internet has opened everything up. You know, it used to be I'd look at these guitars. I was, you know, when you're a kid, you know, oh my God, a Hofner Beetle bass. Oh my God, I don't see any.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, I
Mhm.
want one. But I do have one. But what I'm saying is that the internet is these guitars that were like sacred, that there aren't any around, you know. I can't see one. I want to see one. But now everything's just like, oh yeah, you want a Hofner? Oh, there's one right there.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know what my point is again, gentlemen, but it's just like, it's opened everything up, you know?
Yeah, and it's good. I like it. I like it better this way than you know, there was a time when everybody kept secrets,
Mhm.
and now everything is out in the open. You can find
Everything's out in the open. You're right.
and you can find out, and you have to use that. There's no gatekeeper of information anymore, where it's be like,
No.
well, you don't need to know that. I only know that. Van Halen used to play with his back to the audience, so nobody could figure out what he was doing. Right.
Right.
Today, you can watch a 6-year-old play that eruption solo,
Ye-
and it's good because then they're going to go on and develop a newer style and things like that.
Well, as guitar playing goes, you know, Hendrix just was like out of this world.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing
Eddie
like
Van Halen. I remember when I first heard Eddie Van Halen eruption solo, it was like something that just dropped down from outer space.
right.
It was so fresh and new, you know, it's just like Hendrix.
And I thought he was playing on Spanish Fly. I thought he was playing all those arpeggios. So I had to cross pick. I kept cross picking them, and then somebody said, "No, he's tapping them." I thought
Well, I'm just saying. But now you know, you listen to the eruption solo, and it's like, oh yeah, it's eruption solo.
right.
It's not. But I do remember when it was like shiny and new, and all these guitar players in town were going, "Oh my God, listen to this guy."
No, you can't describe that to a young person. That there was a time when that was it was like discovering something. You'd go, nobody could touch that.
I don't think we have that anymore, gentlemen. I don't know. I would love to think that there is still something out there, but I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I don't know.
I was very fortunate in Chicago. They would have, top 5 guitar players, and I would be mentioned, like DJs would mention my name with other big names. And so I was very fortunate then. So it would be like when your reputation precedes you, you're farther along than if you're something like, who are you? So it helped me a lot in my career over the last 40 years, so you're that guy, so I still play a real lot. I really play a lot. I work every weekend actually. So.
Well, I'm going to try to get to that gig in April then, because now that would be a good weekend. I'll just that'll be good. I'll let Jim know whatever. All right. I guess we've talked about it. We've covered so many topics tonight, but seriously, look for this CD if you can find it. This is out there on Amazon. For God's sakes, pick it up. Pick up anything you can. We didn't even talk about this one, but I'm sure it's great. I haven't even listened to it. I've just been trying to get what I can get. But yeah, this was fun discussion. I really enjoyed it. And hopefully, gentlemen, we've turned people on to the band, and you guys are still out there. You're still playing. I'm just in total awe. Just the fact that you take time and talk to me about it. Hopefully we can turn some people on. That's all I want to do is turn them on to you. Keep that Off-Broadway going, You're still out there.
Yeah, Grant.
All right, Jim,
Thank you.
John,
Thank you.
thanks so much for
Yeah.
coming on, and I'll keep you posted when it goes on, and you probably will see
Oh
me.
yeah, that'd be great.
You'll
Like I
probably
said,
see me in April.
down in Florida, there will be a lot of people watching you.
Cool.
My daughter's sorority, and then
Mhm.
also people around here. I know if you let
I'll
us know.
spread the word. I'm gonna
Yeah.
promote this on the Power Pop user groups, like on Facebook and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'll generate.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to push it. So plus I'm
You
on the
should be able to
Contrarians.
tag us,
I could tag you
tag
guys
the
too.
band or tag one of us.
Okay.
Yeah, you might be surprised. There might be more people here in Illinois that are going to say, "Where have you been?"
Well, probably.
Good.
Probably.
Bring your
But yeah,
1200
we'll get it
number
out there.
to 1201.
Right.
All right, gentlemen,
see
you
you.
have a good
Thank you
night.
so much.
And I'll
Thanks.
see you guys in April.
For sure. That'd be great.
All right, cool. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Grant.